So what is this? A $1 Wii from Japan by Matt Casey. Is it working?
Remember how in my rarest Lego Island video I made a kind of running joke out of how much other stuff I'd bought, including 3 whole other game consoles? Well, guess what? I missed one. While traversing through all those junk bins in the Japanese game stores, I ended up finding yet another thing that very much piqued my interest. It was a Nintendo Wii labeled junk that
100
cost
yen.
only 100 yen.
Damn.
How much is that? Well, factoring in another 10 yen for tax, 110 yen is effectively $1 US. Yeah, a whole Wii for $1. It's like a no-lose situation.
Yeah, but if it says junk, it's supposed to be dead, right? But I'm guessing he managed to fix it.
If I can't get it to work, I could still sell it for parts for more than $1. Obviously, I couldn't test while I was traveling around. You know, I forgot to bring my TV with me. But now that I'm not traveling, let's see just how junk a junk Wii is. Interestingly, it was beautifully wrapped and packaged. Not so much now, since I opened it before to look at it, but for something at the bottom of a junk bin, it was just as carefully prepared as any of the display stuff. Those Japanese sure are. It's definitely used. There were some scuffs and scratches, but nothing super major in my opinion. In fact, I'd guess probably a good majority of Wiis look like this nowadays. But more importantly, does it work? For $1, it probably shouldn't. Plugging it all in, and well, we're definitely getting power. Let's turn it on.
Test. It's back. Sorry as always. Sorry.
Oh, holy shit.
Oh.
So it actually powers up. Right off the bat, that's a lot more than I expected.
And what's the problem?
Alright, nice. It actually looks pretty good, or better than I expected at least. The picture is a little soft and maybe a little dark, but no more than I'd necessarily expect for a composite image, and certainly not enough to consider it junk. I thought it'd be a good idea to test the optical drive, as the primary moving component that's definitely at the greatest risk of failure, and without a soft mod, a broken optical drive could indeed be a deal breaker, explaining the low price. Unfortunately, I quickly realized I couldn't really test that at the moment. One of the few things I didn't buy in Japan was any actual Japanese Wii games.
Fair enough.
I have PAL region games from Australia, and they obviously don't load due to region locking. I decided it was time to install a soft mod. Theoretically, that should allow it to read discs of any region, and if the drive turns out to be broken, will allow booting games from USB and SD cards, so it's not just a paperweight. Now, as you can see, this Wii has been used, and I wanted a fresh start, so I reset it to factory defaults. But not before making a backup, because you never know if there was something rare on there. Next, I reset it and soft-modded with Letterbomb. I installed Preloader and enabled the region-free patch, and tried to boot a PAL game. Unfortunately, all of that didn't make any difference. The disk spun for a while, but then refused to boot. As a matter of fact, none of my PAL disks worked, so assuming the region-free patch is working, I guess the optical drive is dead.
Seems like
I experimented with a burned Japanese game, which was the closest I was going to get without paying for exorbitant shipping prices. Unfortunately, that still has no guarantee of working, since Wii's at a certain point introduced a restricted DVD drive called the D32, which won't accept burned DVDs of any kind.
Thanks,
and
Nintendo.
Indeed, that disc didn't work either. I was really starting to lean towards the drive being broken. It just seemed most likely since the system was so cheap. Little did I know, I would soon get my answer. At this point in time, I was really into playing Mario Kart Wii on WiiMfi, which is the community's resurrection of the Wii's long-terminated online services. Back then, I was playing on the Dolphin emulator just for the convenience of
long until this gets shut down.
But I was also interested in a popular mod of Mario Kart Wii called CTGPR. CTGPR specifically prevents you from playing on emulator primarily to deter cheating, so since I had this Wii set up, I thought, why not? Let's try it out on there. CTGPR also requires a real Mario Kart disc to be in the drive, and since it seemed like the drive didn't work, I had a feeling this wouldn't either. But it turns out I was wrong. Much to my surprise, it started to read the disc, loaded the game, and soon I was playing some custom community maps. Wow, so the drive does work. and the
Okay.
region-free patch just didn't?
Yeah.
It wasn't what I expected, but I'll take it. Well, now I know there's nothing wrong with the drive, so I turned my attention to the only other issue I could see. The video was a little dark.
Yeah,
To be
yeah.
honest, at first glance, it was so subtle that I had to put a working Wii side by side just to be sure.
Doesn't look that subtle, though.
Definitely darker, but check it out on my trusty Trinitron. Yeah, that's
Oh yeah,
dark.
that's bad.
And you're
That's
probably
bad.
thinking, come on, it wasn't that bad. And you're right. Sometimes it wasn't that bad, and sometimes it really was. I eventually realized if it had been powered off for a while, it would be super dark when powered on, but gradually brighten up the longer it was
So it needs to load the
Check
color
out
or
this sped up
something?
recording. After 10 minutes, it's barely
Interesting.
improved. And after a while, it even looks, dare I say it, fine. But if I was a store worker and I saw this when I powered it on,
Yeah.
I might call it junk and basically useless. In fact, it might have been even worse. I tried with some component cables just out of curiosity and got no picture whatsoever. So this might have looked completely dead depending on what cables we used to test
Makes
it.
sense,
Well,
yeah.
the good news is I think it's fixable. In fact, I have a pretty good idea what might be wrong. Can we turn a junk Wii with a dodgy video output into a Wii that functions perfectly?
Show me.
Let's get to disassembling so we can take a look at the main board.
I've never had a Wii, so I have no idea to fix anything. Like, as far as like console junk that I've had, I used to have the original fat PS2, and I don't remember how it died, but it died at some point. And then I got like the slim PS2, which had a problem where like the disc, they wouldn't really like stick inside it that well. And so sometimes they would like, I guess, spin sideways or something and make a lot of crazy noise. And every time you would think, oh fuck, I just broke my disc or something. But then you would open it and it just, I guess he was like turning while like touching the side or the bottom, but it was fine. But the noise he was making was always like it's a PTSD attack every time I think about it. Yeah, the slim PS2, for me at least, had that problem. That's all I can remember. Like, otherwise, never had big problem like that with consoles. Yeah.
Board.
PS3 was big. PS3 had never had any problem.
So, fun fact, this
Drive
was the
failure.
first time I'd ever disassembled a Wii, and it was actually a lot more complicated than I thought. Also, looks like I accidentally left Mario Kart Wii in there. Oh well, shouldn't be a big deal. With the help of an iFixit guide, I was soon down to the main board. Just gotta remove the heatsink and the Wi-Fi card, and the board should just lift
It
up.
looks so simple for something that
here's
does so
what I
much.
think is wrong. I think the gradual brightening is the key to this mystery because immediately it sounds like a faulty capacitor, since a capacitor's defining characteristic is charging up over time. You know, not this much time, but that would be why it's faulty. They're also absolutely notorious for failure, lest we forget the OG Xbox and its system-destroying capacitor. At first glance, it all looked okay, but the Wii uses a lot of surface mount components.
It's surprisingly not full of dust.
As obvious as some great hulking bulgy boy, you know? Luckily, the Wii was an extremely popular system that's been extensively documented by the community, and thanks to Shank's Wii Super Thread, I was soon able to determine this chip here on the underside, marked AVE-RVL, was the video encoder chip responsible for producing the AV output. The chip itself is proprietary, but has nonetheless been pretty well documented. You can also buy replacements if somehow this chip was causing a problem.
20 bucks.
I don't think it is here, but knowing its purpose makes it a solid place to start looking for whatever is. The guide contains a pinout credited to our Lord Ashen himself, which is all I need for now. This pin here is responsible for the composite video output, so let's see what's coming directly out of it. So I wired up a new video plug. You can see I soldered to a nearby resistor connected to the chip leg.
This is way too complicated. I would never have done something like this.
But
it's cool to see.
Structural points for the ground. This should give us a video feed effectively straight from the source, and you might be wondering how that differs from the AV plug proper. Well, between the chip and the plug, the signal actually goes through a noise filtering circuit made up primarily of capacitors. If the signal is clean straight out of the chip, that noise filtering circuit is our prime suspect. It was time to test. I screwed the heatsink in, plugged my composite hijack into the capture card, plugged in the power, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. I don't think I've got anything wrong with my wiring. I tried the regular AV output again, and
it is what it is.
Nothing. Cool. It's always great when something works less after you've tinkered with it. But no, it turns out the Wii just needs the Wi-Fi card plugged in or it refuses to boot. I don't know if I would have guessed that myself, but once again, the Wii community has extensively documented this behavior too. It booted up, already it looks better.
Does it?
Oof, look at that.
Okay,
that looks like a clean signal to me. Here's a comparison to what it was like before, and yeah, this is a significant difference. So that pretty much narrows it down to those noise filtering caps, which should make it easier to track down the culprit. Which one or ones specifically? Well, that will still need some probing to find out. The motherboard is also 6 layers, making it a lot harder to follow traces with just your eyes, but anyway, with a multimeter and the chip pinout, I follow the signal past the aforementioned resistor, which is just a 75 ohm to ground, common for analog video, and up to this capacitor on the other side.
Okay.
It's in series with the composite signal, and the other side even appears to be continuous with the plug. So this is my next suspect.
I definitely understand everything.
I reattach my video plug to the other side of this capacitor. Since we know the signal going into it is clean, if it gives us dim video, it's almost certainly our culprit. Let's see what we got.
Smarter with that. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Back to the dodgy video. So I think that confirms this capacitor is it. Let's go ahead and get some replacements. I could only order them in packs of 10, so I decided, why not? Most of these caps are the same value, so I'll just replace them all. About a week later, the capacitors arrived. I could only get them at a slightly higher voltage rating, which electrically should be fine, but does mean they're physically a little bigger than the ones I'm replacing. I wondered if that would be a problem reassembling it, but I noticed there's another capacitor nearby that seems to be about the same size, so it should be okay.
It should.
Okay, so what you're about to see is me, to put it politely, fucking it up. I'm pretty new to surface mount components and only later learned these surface mount electrolytics are considered notoriously hard to remove. What I wanted to do was something like this, cleanly desolder and lift it off the board. What I ended up doing was this.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that was the sound of these solder pads ripping right off the PCB.
That didn't seem like a good idea, yeah.
Bad. It might be impossible to solder another capacitor onto there now. My only solace is, at least it was just $1. Not the worst thing to make mistakes on. I decided to try again with a different approach on the next capacitor. As I mentioned, removing these is notoriously hard, and there's actually a lot of debate about the best approach to do it. Desoldering is what I tried, and obviously did not succeed at, but the other approach is just twisting them off.
Okay.
It sounds kind of crazy and is naturally a little controversial, but proponents argue
it
actually puts less stress on the pads than desoldering, since the forces go into snapping the capacitor's internals rather than upwards on the PCB pads. Figuring I had nothing to lose, I decided to try that, and it worked.
Okay.
In fact, it worked on all 3 of the remaining capacitors.
Well then.
After some cleanup and removing the leftover
Sometimes you just need to pull something out enough.
Reusable. I was able to replace those
I've learned something today.
No trouble at all. Now, remember, I'm pretty new to this. I need a little more practice and probably some better equipment if I'm going to keep working with surface mount stuff, so do your own research if you're going to do something like this. All I can say is, for these caps on this board, twisting ended up causing no problems at all. As for that first one though, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, how'd you fix that?
The pads are pretty much all gone. But that's when I noticed something interesting. Something that might be very lucky.
Just put some glue, I don't know.
The traces on the PCB.
I don't know.
They're arranged in such a way that if the capacitor was mounted diagonally, it might just connect to the traces it's supposed to. We might actually be able to make this work. I scraped off the solder mask on those traces so I could solder directly to them, and lining up the capacitor, I think it actually might just work. I apologize for this bad camera angle, but I really did need to concentrate here. If I got either of the ends in the wrong place, that could have made a bad situation even worse. Luckily, my hunch was right. The capacitor was indeed
it's not very straight, but I guess it's fine.
Traces.
If it works, it works.
If this works, this might be the best bodge I've ever done. It's time for the moment of truth. Let's see if this actually works. Holy shit. It actually works. And the video looks great. This is a junk Wii no more. It is now 100% functional.
Now, how much can you make from that though? Like, how much is a used Wii though? Now that he fixed it. So how much profit did that make?
There's one last comparison, what it looked like before and what it looks like now.
Actually, I should look it up. If I go to eBay, how much is a Wii? What's the profit? eBay Wii. No, just a Wii itself. It's not crazy. At least in France. At least in Euro, yeah, it's not crazy. Like 45 euro for like the Wii, 3 games, two like controllers. I mean, you know, it's still cool that you fixed it, right? You got it for like $1, so it's still pretty crazy, right? But just saying, you know, I thought it would be much more expensive, like with and 25. Man, that's cheaper. I didn't realize they were so cheap.
The difference is literally night and day. It's kind of funny to think that it was a $1 Wii, and if I could have bought the capacitors individually, it would have been a $1 fix as well.
Yeah.
And despite some trouble with the repair, thanks to likely the greatest bod of my life, it's all good and looks surprisingly decent.
It does.
And yes, the component output is functional now too, which is great because that's probably what I'll actually be using. I think it's officially time to put this thing back together. Well, despite some
pretty cool
mistakes made during this repair,
mistakes were made.
Super happy with how it worked out in the end. And it got me thinking, knowing capacitors, I wonder if this will become a common issue for Wiis as they continue to age.
Would make sense.
At the time of this video, I could only find a handful of people mentioning an issue like this, so maybe it is just an unlucky unit. But in case someone does run into this issue on another Wii, my ultimate hope is that this video helps them fix it so that Wii can continue to function. I have a real soft spot for the Wii, and like all electronics that bring us joy, I believe they deserve to be preserved and taken care of. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess the Wii was like one of the most popular consoles ever, right? So there's so much documentation about how to fix anything. So that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So, you know, I guess original Wii would always be possible to fix in some ways and keep going for like decades to come, which is cool. I do like that. So yeah, pretty interesting video. I mean, you know, I never really watched this kind of like fixing something video, but that is cool. That is pretty cool. I like it. Very nice fix. Alright.